My name is Amy Huizenga. It's Amyhuizenga.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi.
Ms. Huizenga, how old are you?
I am 26 years old.
Are you employed?
I am.
What do you do?
I work backstage in the theater aboard a cruise ship.
Do you know Caylee Anthony?
I did.
Well, when did you first meet Ms. Anthony?
I truly met her for the first time New Year's Eve going into 2008.
Did there come a time that your relationship became close?
Yes, it did, around February of that year.
Would you consider yourselves back in that time period one of her best friends?
Very, very close friends, yes.
Do you know Ricardo Morales?
Yes.
How do you know Ricardo?
He is one of my best friends.
Attorneys approach the bench. I don't need. You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Huizenga, back in January, February, March of 2008, how were you employed?
I was working at the Orlando Repertory Theater as a backstage technician and also at Huizenga serving tables.
During this time frame, were you under the impression that the defendant also had a job?
I was.
What job was that?
She was an events coordinator at Universal Studios.
Did you ever see any type of identification that she had that would show that she worked at Universal?
I don't believe so.
During January, February, March of 2008, did you spend a lot of time with the defendant?
A fair amount.
Okay. Per week, how many times do you think you would see her?
Probably like once or twice once she and Ricardo had started dating.
Okay. How about other types of communication? Did you email each other?
Yeah, well, not email. We text messaged a lot. We talked on the phone, over instant message, MySpace.
Would you characterize that as almost at least a daily occurrence?
Yes.
Now, the times that, would you hang out after work?
Yes.
At the time, with whom were you living?
I was at that time living with Troy Brown.
Okay.
And for a little while, Lauren, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna remember her last name right now. She had moved out in that time period. But so Troy Brown consistently through then.
All right. During this time period, did you see Caylee Anthony?
Yes.
Would you see her on a regular basis?
Most of the time she would be in bed by the time I got off work. But if Casey was there, Caylee was over at Ricardo and JP's, which is where I mostly saw her.
Were there times during this period where you all had made plans to go out on a typical Friday or Saturday night, including the defendant?
Yes.
Were there ever times during this time period where the defendant could not go?
Yes.
Why?
Something would come up with her mom watching Caylee and she wouldn't be able to go because there was no one to watch her.
Were there times that the defendant would bring Caylee over anyway?
Yes.
On those occasions, what would y'all do?
We would hang out. Casey would either put Caylee to bed up in Ricardo's room or on the couch at a reasonable hour, sometimes a little bit longer so we could play with her for a little bit. She'd put her to bed and then we'd hang out.
Okay. During this time frame, again, going to January, February, March, approximately how many times, if you know, was the defendant unable to hang out with you or to do things with you because of Caylee?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
It would, I'd say around once a weekend, there'd be, or once a week at least, that there'd be something that would be planned or we'd talk about making plans and we couldn't make plans because it couldn't happen.
Okay. You were aware, or did you become aware that when the defendant and Ricardo broke up?
It was a really messy off again, on again breakup, but yeah, I was aware of all the steps along the way.
Okay. You were aware of that from the defendant?
Yes.
Were you also being made aware of that by Ricardo?
Not as detailedly, but I was aware of it.
In May of 2008, were they broken up?
That was the off again, on again period.
During this time period, what was your living situation?
Excuse me?
What was your living situation?
I was still living with Troy Brown.
Did there come a time in May of 2008 when you were starting to look for another place to live?
Yes.
Did you have anything specifically in mind?
I had planned on living with Casey.
Okay. When did you all start talking about doing that?
Around mid-May, when we found out that the house that I was living in with Troy was going to be sold, and I didn't know where to go.
Okay. What did you and the defendant do in order to facilitate moving in together?
Talked about stuff a lot. It was all verbal that we had talked about finding an apartment, and then we were going to move into a house.
Was there ever a time during May of 2008 where you guys, either one of you, would find a house and you'd go and look at it?
There was an appointment made for an apartment that I was told about, and I don't quite recall the reason why we couldn't go, but that it wasn't going to work out.
Okay. Why wasn't it? Well, who decided it wasn't going to work out?
Casey, she was the one who had done the research.
Did this happen on more than one occasion?
With the various things that we were going to live in, yes.
Okay. When you say the various things we were going to live in, are you referring to different apartments?
No, there was a time when she had told me that she was going to be taking over the mortgage payments of her parents' house, and that we could just move in there, and there was a room that I could live in there.
Okay. Was there a time frame put on when you might be able to move into her parents' home?
It was early July, I want to say. Maybe late June.
Okay. Did you express any interest in meeting her parents?
Yes.
How did you tell her that? Or how did you express that?
That I really wanted to meet her mom. I'm not 100%. I kind of think that there was one time when she was going to go to see one of the places with us. And I was really excited to meet her because I was going to be living with her daughter and her granddaughter. And I thought she would want to meet me. And it seemed natural that I would want to meet her.
Were there ever any plans in May of 2008 to actually meet?
No specific plans to meet her mom.
During this time period in May, did the defendant ever relate to you issues or problems that she was having with her mother as it related to Caylee?
Only when Casey would think that Cindy was going to be watching Caylee and then wasn't going to be able to, so then she would not be able to go out.
Okay. Did this happen on a frequent basis during this time period?
Fairly.
During this period in May of 2008, was it happening more that you were being told, at least, that Mrs. Anthony could not take care of Caylee than it was happening back in January, February, and March of 2008?
Yes, and the frustration was greater.
Okay. What was your phone number back during this time period?
Excuse me?
Your phone number back during this time period?
It was 954-328-9214.
Have a second, Judge. May I approach the witness, Judge?
You may.
Ms. Huizenga, I'm showing you what's been previously marked for identification MP. First of all, do you recognize the phone number, the phone number that appears on that piece of paper?
I'm guessing it's Casey's. I had it programmed in my phone.
Okay. Looking at that, can you see the message that appears on there?
Yes.
All right. Do you recognize that message?
It seems like a very familiar message that I probably got a couple times.
Okay. Who did you get that message from?
Most definitely from Casey.
Okay. Later on, after July 15th of 2008, did you have the opportunity to give your cell phone to law enforcement?
Yes, I volunteered it to them.
Okay. The text message that appears there, well, first of all, does that text message appear to be a true and accurate text message that you received from the defendant on May 3rd of 2008?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what's been previously marked for identification MP into evidence as the state's next in line.
What says the defense?
We would object under 403, relevance, and improper authentication.
Objection overruled. It will be received in evidence as states numbered.
Thank you, Judge. May I publish this thing?
After you retrieve it and give it to the clerk to have it remarked.
Thank you, Judge. All right, can you blow that up for me a little bit?
Can't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. What time did you receive that text message?
At 11:10 p.m.
All right, and what does that message say?
Downtown tomorrow, my mom owes me.
Okay. And at 11:12:32, what is the next text message that you received from the defendant?
This week I'm there, no way I'm staying home.
All right. During this time period in May, when you read the words, "My mom owes me," did you know what she was talking about?
That to watch Caylee.
Why did she owe her?
I never really knew.
Okay. Were there times?
Judge, move to strike, calls for speculation, and based on the
Overruled. She
witness's
said
answer, it's all.
she said she didn't know, so she didn't answer the question.
You had previously testified that there were times that the defendant had made plans with you only to cancel them, correct?
Correct.
And why did she cancel those plans?
Because her mom wasn't watching Caylee.
Right. The messages that we see here, is this a recurrent theme in May of 2008?
Correct.
Did the defendant tell you anything about her relationship with her mother during this time period?
It was strained. It was hard. Her mom was being continually agitated with her.
Did she tell you why her mother was continually agitated with her?
I remember there was a time when she told me that her mom had told her that she was an unfit mother. She was extremely upset about that. And she didn't really know why her mom had said those things.
Hearsay.
Overruled.
Was this a topic of conversation on a regular basis during this time period?
Her frustration with her mother, yes.
Did you ever overhear any arguments between the two of them, or at least while the defendant was on the phone with her mother during this time period?
Beginnings or ends of the conversation, yes.
And after those conversations ended, what would she say, or did she say anything about the relationship with her mom?
Just that her mom was crazy and she was just really frustrated and that she needed space and she didn't understand why she couldn't understand that.
All right, let's move into June of 2008. Did there come a time that you moved in with Ricardo?
Yes,
When did that occur?
that occurred, I believe, June 5th, 6th. I had wrecked my car and they lived close to where I worked, so I moved in with them so I could walk to work.
We'll just call it the beginning of June.
Yes.
Okay. Who else was living at this place with Ricardo?
Ricardo Morales and JP Chat. It's JP Chat's place.
You said that you had wrecked your car.
Yes.
Where did you wreck your car?
On my way home from downtown, I fell asleep.
Did that necessitate you having to get another car?
Yes.
What plans did you make to get another car?
Casey was going to give me a ride to Jacksonville so I could purchase a car from my uncle.
What time was the defendant going to pick you up?
It was extremely early in the morning.
Do you recall the date?
June 13th?
On June 3rd, that's the day that you were supposed to go to Jacksonville.
Yes.
Did the defendant come pick you up on June 13th of 2008?
No, she did not.
What happened?
I texted
Overruled.
I texted her to find, just to confirm, make sure she was awake because it was early
When did you text her, that morning or the night?
that morning,
Okay.
just to make sure she hadn't overslept. And she texted back that there were some family problems and that she was going to the hospital with her dad.
Did she tell you in any way what the problem was with her dad?
Objection, Judge. Relevance.
Sustained.
When you received that message, what did you do?
I looked for a rental car or some other way to get up to Jacksonville.
And did you go?
Yes.
Later on that day of the 13th, did you hear in any form of communication from the defendant?
I did.
And what was the nature of that communication?
We spoke up on the phone when I had gotten to Jacksonville. She wanted to let me know what had happened with her dad. And then,
Judge. Relevance.
Don't tell us what happened to her dad, but continue.
just to kind of check in.
Okay. Later on, did you hear from her some more? Again?
I did.
And in relation to what?
She wanted me to come to Fusion that evening.
Did you return from Jacksonville that night?
Yes.
Did you go to Fusion?
No.
Later on? Okay.
Shaking your
It was
head.
a no. Sorry, I thought I spoke.
Okay. Now, during this time period, were you looking for different types of work? Or a different job?
I was not at that time, no. Well, I will take that back. I work in theater. You're continually looking for work. So I was trying to find jobs at various places. It wasn't an active, I needed a job.
Okay. Did you ever ask the defendant for assistance in that regard?
Yes.
What did you ask her?
She worked at, well, I thought she worked at Universal Studios. I really wanted to work at Universal Studios. So I gave her my resume and was hoping she could bring it to someone for me.
How did you give her your resume? In other
I
words,
emailed her my resume.
do you recall when you did that?
No.
Okay. Did you see the defendant on June 13th? After you came back from Jacksonville?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Was there a period of time during the month of June of 2008 when you didn't see her at all?
Yes.
Do you recall how long that time period was?
About 3 weeks.
During this 3 weeks when you did not see her, did you stay in contact with her?
Yes.
Again, would this be through either telephone calls or text messages?
Correct.
During this time period when you didn't actually see her but spoke with her, did you become aware from the defendant that she was having car trouble?
Yes.
What can you tell the jury about what she told you about that?
She had gotten a few flat tires one night. There were 2 individual occurrences of her running out of gas, and there was also an extremely bad smell from her car.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Ms. Huizenga, I'm showing you what's been previously marked for identification MQ. Again, do you recognize the text messages or the message that appears on that exhibit?
Yes.
Who was that message from?
From Caylee Anthony.
Does that appear to be a true and accurate text message or a copy of the text message that you received from her
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what's been previously marked for identification MQ into evidence as the state's next in line.
What says the defense?
No objections, Judge.
It will be received in evidence as states numbered.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, Your Honor, may I publish this?
You may.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Huizenga, this text message is dated 6/27,
Correct.
and what does she write to you?
There was definitely part of a dead animal plastered to the frame of my car.
All right, let's stop there for a second. Prior to receiving this text message, had you had various or phone conversations with the defendant regarding the smell in the car?
Yes.
Over what span of days?
She remarked that there was a really bad smell coming out of her car and she didn't know what it was. And then there was another phone call where she said it had gotten worse and she thought maybe her dad had run over something when he had borrowed the car.
Okay. When she first told you about the smell of the car, approximately how many days before you received this text message did you first hear about the smell in the car?
It was within a week, maybe slightly less.
And what is the first thing you remember her actually saying about the smell in the car?
She said something smelled really bad. I don't remember any specific words.
She didn't have an explanation for it at that time?
No.
All right. So the next time you hear about the smell in the car, is it the same day or the next day?
It's probably the next day or the day after that. There was a little bit of time in between.
And the next time she tells you about the smell in the car, what does she say about it?
That it had gotten worse and her idea that perhaps it was something that had gotten run over.
That's something, maybe something I got run over?
Yeah.
Did you ever suggest to her that she check?
No.
Okay. Did the next time that you actually had a conversation about the smell in the car, when was that?
It was this.
Okay.
It was the two conversations and the text message was the end of the story.
All right. When moving on to, again, the first text message that we see here is stamped 11:34 a.m.?
Yes.
All right. Now we get to 11:49. The text message that she sends to you is, my car ran out of gas again.
Correct.
All right. When was the first time you had heard about her car running out of gas?
I think it was about a week before.
Did she tell you where she ran out of gas?
I don't remember.
Did you ask, at that time, the first time that she ran out of gas, did she ask you for any assistance?
No.
Then we go down approximately, well, 10 minutes later or so, 9 minutes later, you received another text message. 2 weeks in a row on a Friday. My stupid car runs out of gas. Wow. The second time, did she tell you where she ran out of gas?
It was at her, she had parked her car at an Amscot and that she had left it there and was hoping it wouldn't get towed.
Did you have any subsequent phone conversation with her after these text messages about getting her car some gas?
Probably in the midst of conversation.
Was there a time period that she came, more or less, did she start staying with you?
Yes.
When was that?
That was June 30th.
How did that happen?
She knocked on the door really early in the morning and said she was there and then didn't leave.
Were you expecting her?
No, I was asleep.
You knew or did you know that she was dating somebody at the time?
Yes.
Were you aware through talking with her that this boyfriend was leaving town?
Yes.
Did you have any idea where the defendant was staying during this time period?
I figured that she was staying with Tony, but I didn't know for sure.
Did she ever at any time during this time period tell you that she was staying exclusively with Tony?
No.
Or that she had not been home?
Not that she had not been home. Like, not, those words were never specifically said. It was implied, but not said.
Okay. Again, during this time period at the end of June, do you recall the defendant talking about any strife or problems with her mother?
Yes, but not any more than usual.
When she spoke about her mother during this time period, what was her demeanor?
Not very happy with her.
Okay. Was she angry?
More frustrated.
What did she tell you about the problem that she was having with her mom?
There weren't a lot of specifics. Most of them had to do with Caylee. And
What do you recall the problems or the issue being about Caylee?
in that time period, it was that Cindy wanted to see Caylee, and Casey was keeping her away because there was stuff going on at home, and she was trying to keep him out of that situation.
So the defendant told you that.
I apologize, Mr. George. Are you going to refer to this any longer?
No, I'm sorry. I'll take it out if you like. During this time period in June, when you were speaking with her, did she inform you that she was keeping Caylee from her mom?
Yes.
Why was she keeping Caylee from her mom?
There was, George and Cindy were having problems at home, and she wanted to keep Caylee out of the drama.
Did she tell you what the problems that George and Cindy were having at home?
She told me they were considering divorce.
Did she tell you why divorce was a consideration?
That her dad had cheated on her mom.
Was this the first time during this time period, was this the first time that you had heard that there was, from the defendant, that there was the possibility of divorce between the two of them?
I don't remember exactly.
Okay. And because, explain again, or explain what that potential pending divorce had to do with Caylee.
It was the not happiness at home that Casey wanted to keep her from, is what I had gotten out of it.
Was there also any conversation about needing space?
Yes.
Okay. What do you recall the defendant telling you about needing or wanting her space?
And it also had to do with her wanting to move out. It was time for them to have their lives and be away from her parents. Grow up, that's what you want to do.
Did the defendant ever tell you that she resented her parents?
I don't think resentment would be the word.
What would be the word?
I think there were frustrations and unhappiness and obvious problems. But resentment goes really deep. I don't think it was quite that deep.
During this time period in June, are you still working or thinking that you're going to be moving into this home?
Correct.
Again, you're still planning on the beginning of July.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there were many dates set that didn't happen.
Okay. How many different dates were set?
At least two. There's definitely one where I almost got a moving truck. Like, I had looked up all the prices and arranged people to help me move.
When was that?
That was in June at some point.
And when those moving dates were set, were they canceled?
Yes,
Who canceled them?
Casey.
The first time they were canceled, why were they canceled?
I remember some of the reasons, just not what order they came in. There was one time when landscaping needed to be done. There was, and just various issues with the house that she said George wanted to fix up before it was ours. There was one time when she had said there were like 20 people over and she didn't know what was, when it was going to be done. So we had to do it at a different time.
Was there ever a time that the defendant told you that the house was not going to be available?
No. Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I take that back. I apologize.
It's okay.
Yes.
When was that?
Sorry. I don't remember exactly when, but she had said that Cindy took back the deal. That Bank of America had this 30-day policy where the paperwork that had been signed could be undone. None of the words really made sense to me at the time. And that then it wasn't happening, which added to the frustration with her mother.
Did she tell you why? Or were you given a reason why Cindy went back on the deal?
I don't remember. I may have been.
Do you recall approximately, was this still in June or was this in July when this happened?
This was in July.
When speaking about her mother, you had used the word, well, I'm sorry, what adjectives did the defendant use to describe her mom during this time period?
Mainly crazy.
Okay. Did she say why?
Not in words that I could really recall. She talked a lot. But it was just a lot of, just normal child complaining about parent stuff. But a lot of to do with Caylee.
Just seeing her? Where Cindy wanted to see her? Or was
Wanted to
it
see her, and then like frustrations of the past with their relationship. And
what was the problem with the past?
This entire line of questioning is purely speculative and move to strike based on speculation.
And these are, I'm sorry,
Mr. George?
these are statements made by the defendant.
I don't believe these are statements attributed to Miss Anthony as much as they are these witnesses' interpretations of what some of
The
what
last
she
question,
said.
sustained.
Thank you, Judge. All right, so the defendant shows up at your door
yes,
on June 30th.
that's correct.
Did she tell you that she needed to stay with you?
No,
Okay. Did she wind up staying with you?
yes,
For how long?
about a week.
Did she come with luggage?
She had stuff in Tony's car. She never so much brought it in like she was going to be staying there long term. It wasn't my place.
Okay. Did you have any problem with her staying?
Only in so much as it wasn't my place and I couldn't allow her to stay. And I didn't like that.
Do you know who William Waters is?
Yes.
Who is he?
He was a friend of mine.
Did you attend a 4th of July party at William Waters' house?
Yes.
Was this a party that you had known was coming up?
Yes, I helped plan it.
You helped plan it?
Yes,
Did you invite the defendant to that party?
I did.
When did you invite her initially?
Probably around a week to 5 days beforehand.
When you invited her, or at least told her about this party, what did she tell you in response to being able to attend?
She wouldn't be able to come.
Did she tell you why she couldn't come?
Caylee.
What did she say about Caylee?
That she was going to be with her and wouldn't be able to come.
When she told you that, did you have a suggestion for her?
I said she should bring Caylee. Kids are fun at barbecues.
What did she say in response to that?
She said she'd think about it.
Now, during this period that she's staying with you, do you ask her where Caylee is?
I never had to. She always had an explanation as to where Caylee was.
Okay. Where was Caylee?
She was at the beach with the nanny and her mom. She was at theme parks. She was pretty much doing a tour of Florida. There was Busch Gardens at some point.
Okay. So did you and the defendant go to William Waters' party?
Yes.
During the course of that get-together or that party, did you ask or did you ask any more about Caylee?
She told me, I again, didn't have to ask. She told me that Caylee was at SeaWorld with the nanny.
July 5th.
Yes.
Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Why?
Because I got woke up by a lot of tapping fingernails on a computer.
And when you woke up, who was on the computer?
Casey.
How would you describe her demeanor?
She was extremely happy because Tony was going to be coming home that day.
Did she leave, I guess it's your residence, did she leave where you were living on the 5th?
Yes.
Do you know where she went when she left?
Fairly certain she hung out with Will for the rest of the day. I had to work and then went to the airport to go pick up Tony.
You had mentioned a few minutes ago that when she appeared at your house on the 30th, she was driving Tony's car.
Correct.
Did she tell you what the status of her car was?
That it was in the shop.
Now, did you have a trip planned during the month of July of 2008?
I did.
Where did you go?
Puerto Rico.
Do you recall what date that you left?
I left July 8th, I believe.
Who else went?
Met with JP Chat, Ricardo Morales joined us, and then Troy joined us.
Was this a trip that had been planned in advance, far in advance?
Far in advance, yes.
Was there a time period in 2008 where the defendant was also going to Puerto Rico with you?
She wanted to, yes.
Okay. When did you learn that she ultimately was not going to go?
After we left. She was still hoping she could somehow work it out. It obviously seemed like it wasn't going to happen, but.
What do you recall her having to work out in order for her to go to Puerto Rico?
Someone to watch Caylee.
And was it your understanding she was unable to find anybody to do that?
I believe so.
Your Honor, may counsel approach?
You may. You may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Huizenga, you went to Puerto Rico.
Yes.
What date did you come back?
I came back July 15th.
When you came back, who picked you up at the airport?
Caylee Anthony.
What car did she pick you up in?
Mine.
When she picked, what kind of car did you have at the time?
It's a red Toyota Corolla.
Big car, small car?
Very little. Well, I mean, little, but
Did the people that you went to Puerto Rico with, did they all come back on the same flight?
yes.
Did you give or did she give everybody a ride back?
We couldn't all fit.
Okay, so who went home first?
I went home, I took Casey back to Tony's, and then came to pick up the boys.
After you got home and back to your apartment, did you do anything else?
I left with JP to go to the Florida Mall.
Why did you go to the Florida Mall?
The iPhone 3GS, I think it was that year, had come out while we were gone, and JP really, really, really wanted it, so we went there to get that.
While you were at the mall, did you receive a phone call?
I did.
Who did you receive a phone call from?
Cindy Anthony.
Without detailing or talking about what she told you, what can you tell this jury about her demeanor while you spoke with her?
Very, very, very scared.
Had you ever spoken to her before?
I had not.
When you first started speaking with her, what was your initial reaction?
Surprise. I'd never spoken to her.
Were you afraid to speak with her?
Cautious. Not afraid, just cautious.
Why were you cautious?
Casey told me she was crazy.
After after that conversation, did you meet Mrs. Anthony?
I did.
Where did you meet her?
She came and picked me up from the Florida Mall
When she came to pick you up, why did she pick you up?
because I needed to take her to Casey.
Did she tell you what had been going on in her life over the last month?
Yes,
Did you know how to get to Tony's house?
I did.
Did you take her to Tony's house?
I did.
Did you and Mrs. Anthony discuss what you would do once you got there?
We did.
What was the decision or what was the plan?
That I would knock on the door, have Casey come out, and then Cindy could confront her.
And is that what you did?
Yes.
When you knocked on the door, who answered the door?
They said it was open, so I had to open it.
When you opened it, did you actually walk into the apartment?
I did not.
And when you opened the apartment, did you see the defendant?
I did.
What was she doing?
She was sitting on the couch.
And what did you do or say to her when you saw her?
I motioned for her to come out. I'm pretty sure I told her just to come out.
Did she?
Yes.
Now, when she came out, where was Cindy Anthony
Just
in relation to the door?
Not too terribly far away. The landing was only 12 to 15 feet long anyway. Long and far enough to weigh far enough out of eyesight so she would actually come out, but close enough where she could get there fast.
How would you describe Mrs. Anthony's demeanor when you got to the apartment?
Very confrontational.
Angry?
Yeah.
So when the defendant comes out of the apartment, what is the first thing you see or hear?
A massive explosion of mother and daughter. And just, I was a little scared and really kind of tried to close myself off as much. I was caught in the middle of it for a while and then managed to escape. But a lot of confrontation and defense.
What was the first question you heard Mrs. Anthony ask Casey?
Fairly certain she asked where Caylee was.
What was her response?
She's with my nanny.
Sustain.
All right. What did the defendant say in response to this question?
She's with the nanny.
Did the defendant agree to take Mrs. Anthony to Caylee?
With a very, very big amount of persuasion.
Objection, judgment to strike based on hearsay.
Overruled.
You said that there was a mother-daughter confrontation.
Yes.
Was the defendant at any time during this initial confrontation defensive?
Objection, judge calls for speculation.
Sustain.
I'll rephrase it. What was the defendant's demeanor towards her mother at this stage?
So I'm trying to figure out the right phrasing. Defensive, but not in a backed off way, in a confrontational defensive. Like she was defending her position, but was meeting Cindy in the middle as far as aggression went.
Was she giving as good as she got?
Yes.
Did Casey want to leave that apartment?
No.
Objection, judge calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Did the defendant ever say that she was not leaving the apartment?
I don't recall hearing those words because I was trying to get away from it.
Okay. Did you ever did you see the defendant and Cindy Anthony walk back into the apartment?
I did not. I had gone downstairs at that point.
Did they come back out?
They had to have.
Okay. When they got out of the apartment, where'd they go?
We went back to the car.
All right. Where are you sitting?
Pardon?
Where are you sitting in the car?
I was in the back seat.
Where's the defendant?
In the front seat.
Are they speaking, or is the defendant speaking to her mother while you're being driven home?
No.
She doesn't say anything?
Only if told, asked again where Caylee was. She's with the nanny.
Objection, judge move to strike. All hearsay.
Overruled. Untimely.
pretty much the same conversation going in a circle. There were a lot of accusations from Cindy to Casey. Most of her responses were crossed arms and a glaring look.
The defendant's arms are crossed.
Yes. She kind of looked like she was 16 and gotten caught in doing something bad.
Judge, move to strike non-responsive.
Sustain.
Sorry.
Motion to strike granted. Jurors to disregard the last comment by the witness.
Did you ever hear the defendant, while in the car, talk about space?
Probably all of the things said between the car ride and the confrontation outside kind of all mushed together.
What do you recall the defendant saying about space?
That she and Caylee needed their space.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time, Judge.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the time is now approximately 5 minutes to the hour 5. I'll probably be a little longer cross-examination other than 5 minutes. So I'm going to let you go for the evening. Some of you have requested copies of the St. Petersburg Times. Is that correct? Okay. We've had conversation with the St. Pete Times. We will be able to provide you with copies, but they will be edited. So anything in relationship to this case will be taken out. So if there are holes in your newspaper, they are shipping, I believe, the back copies from this weekend. So you should have those either sometime tomorrow, Wednesday, or the day after that. Okay? Please remember my previous admonitions. Do not discuss this case among yourselves, along with other admonitions. Members of the jury, you're here excused for the evening. You may be seated. Ms. Huizenga, you can stand down. You need to be back here tomorrow, probably about 8:45, so we can start promptly with your cross-examination tomorrow at 9 a.m. Okay. Now, as to the hearing that we're going to have tomorrow morning at 8:30, you will get a copy of the transcript tonight at some point. Make sure Ms. Peters gets your email address. When we come in, I want the state to specifically indicate the statements that they have reference to. In reading Huggins, there is cited inside of Huggins a couple of cases. One of the things I'm going to ask the state to tell me about those particular statements, whether or not they're exculpatory or whether or not those statements are to collateral matters solely. If they are to collateral matters solely, that is, what are they relevant for? What do they tend to prove or disprove? If they're solely related to collateral matters, then we need to talk about the balancing test that's performed, which was discussed in that particular opinion. Also, please read Caruso versus State, 645 Southern 2nd 389, which was cited by Justice Periente in her dissent, where she dissented against the majority, but there are some gems in there that you may want to pick up on. If they relate solely to collateral matters, then, as I said before, there's a balancing test that must be applied. as to whether or not 6 felony convictions over something that may or may not be material and the prejudice that flows from that. While Huggins stands for the proposition what it stands for, that particular evidence went solely in Huggins to shave pubic hair, which dealt with consciousness of guilt. So look very closely at the statements that this is being offered to, and I will read them. I will read the transcripts tonight, and we will determine whether or not they are, whether convictions are admissible, similar to a situation in Huggins, or whether or not we are bordering on which may be reversible error. So I'm going to take a close look at that, and that's why I gave Mr. Baez time to look at this, because once that bell is rung, you cannot unring it. Okay, are there any matters we need to take up? And please, when you come in here in the morning, since time is limited, get directly to the facts, no editorial comments or closing or opening type arguments. Just get right to the point. You have 10 minutes for each side to make your points. But please read this opinion very carefully. I don't know if you have Westlaw, but if you print it out on Westlaw, it really starts at, I believe, head note. It's on page 21, I think head note 2, where it actually starts. Okay, anything else on behalf of the state of Florida?
Nothing from the defense, sir.
And the defense. Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Ashton, would you point out the particular statements that you feel meet the definition contained in Huggins versus State, and why are those statements operatory? It may take you a little time to find it, since the pages may or may not be the same numbered ones that we got last night.
Well, upon review, let me just say, first of all, that we'd like to thank Ms. Peters for her extraordinary efforts in getting this to us overnight. Upon review, the statements we were concerned about appear at page 79 of the transcript. Pardon me. One of the, this has to do with the putative father of Caylee, Mr. Baker. This is all material that was not discussed by the state. I'm prefacing that by saying that if this is offered in the context of simply another one of the defendant's false statements, then we would withdraw our request, because obviously the defense is not asserting that she's credible. The reason that we were somewhat concerned about it was that the court had previously ordered that any hearsay statements were to be proffered, and since that wasn't done, we don't really know the purpose for which that's being offered. So if the defense indicates now that this is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but just as another one of her false statements, then we would withdraw our request. We'll leave the J&S as marked. If it comes up again, we'll address it then. The defense now is aware that, you know, we have Huggins in our back pocket. But so if they indicate that that was its purpose and it's not for the truth of the matter asserted, then the issue is moot.
Dealing with these imaginary people was dealing with, but Mr. Mason?
Your Honor, at first, and thank you also, Mr. Ashton, is this the only page that you all decided was
Well, the
issue for the 610 request.
There were other areas that were additional facts, for instance, about Jeff Hopkins, et cetera. I take it from the context that all of these statements were being offered in that same vein. So, I mean, I would add the Jeff Hopkins, but it appeared that was all starting at page 79 and going on through all the discussions about Jeff Hopkins at through 83. You know, and I'm not waiving any argument we may have later to go back and find a substantive statement, either from this witness or another witness, and reassert the issue. But for today's purposes, our concern was Mr. Baker and discussions about Mr. Hopkins and whether any of that was actually asserted by the defense to actually be true, particularly as to Mr. Baker, because Mr. Baker, as we know from the investigation, the actual paternity of Caylee is something that has never really been determined. Obviously, we don't know from the evidence whether Mr. Baker is in fact Caylee's father. We suspect he may not be, but nobody really knows since Mr. Baker is deceased. So,
This line of questioning on this page would be related to, as Mr. Ashton forecast, the additional continuing lies. It has nothing to do with the exculpatory statement in that regard, and therefore 610 would not apply. Now, I agree, there may be other times later on in the case when we can revisit this again. But for now, I think he's right to withdraw that request and we can move ahead.
you understand that we request you would admit that at this time.
The only thing I'm going to say is the following. Please read Florida Statute 90.806, paren 1, which reads as follows. When a hearsay statement has been admitted in evidence, credibility of the declarant may be attacked, and if attacked, may be supported by any evidence that would be admissible for those purposes if the declarant has testified as a witness. Again, the case of Huggins versus State, a 2004 Supreme Court of Florida case found at 889 7 seconds 743. Also, Fisher versus State, which is found at 924 7 seconds 914, a 2006 decision of the 5th District Court of Appeals. Gonzalez versus State, which is found at 948 7 seconds 877, a 2007 4th District Court of Appeals case. The cases which are cited within Huggins that came out of the 1st and 4th DCA, is interesting to note that the case that came out of the 1st DCA, Worley, W-E-R-L-E-Y versus State, 814 7 seconds 1159, was written by then District Court of Appeals Judge Poston, who now sits on the Florida Supreme Court. Just be very, very careful when you elicit hearsay statements, because the aftershock of it can have a devastating effect. Okay, then we will be in recess to 9 a.m. I'd like to thank both the state and the defense, particularly our court reporting person, Ms. Peters, for laboring late at night to get this out. I think the last email came about 10:30 last night. Okay, we will be in recess. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. And did you heed all of my previous admonitions over the evening recess? Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Baez, you may proceed, sir.
May it please the court. Mr. George. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Ms. Huizenga.
Good morning.
Yesterday, you testified that you were friends with Caylee Anthony,
That is correct.
but you really weren't friends for very long, were you?
No,
In fact, the entire time that you really hung out with her was really only from February to July.
that's correct.
So we're talking about 5 months max. And a good portion of that you didn't even spend with her.
Not in physical contact, no.
And a majority of your relationship, or generally speaking, you guys communicated via text messages.
Or phone calls.
Do you recall letting law enforcement know that you generally text each other from February-ish several times?
Yes,
Daily.
I gave them all my text messages.
I'm sorry?
Yes, I gave them all my text messages.
Yes. In fact, if I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
Last place you look. Okay. Now, these are your text messages from April 24th through July.
Okay,
And you gave that voluntarily to law enforcement.
correct.
They basically downloaded your phone.
Yes,
And this is practically all of the text messages, not only to Caylee, but of course to other individuals throughout that time period.
correct.
And practically covers the entire time you knew or were friends with Caylee.
Just a little after, but yeah.
Now, there were a couple of text messages admitted yesterday, and there was only one that was admitted that talks about, well, actually, before I get into that, the youth today, that's all you guys do is text, right?
I had a job where I had a lot of downtime.
Okay. And it's very common for young adults your age to live on the phones, as they say.
That's correct.
And a large part of that is texting and MySpace and all that
Yes,
stuff. So this is a pretty good representation of your relationship with Caylee.
it's a good picture.
Okay. And it shows a good picture of you as well.
Yes,
Now, the text messages that were admitted and I'm referring specifically to Defense Exhibit 58, State's Exhibit 58. There's only one that refers to Casey's mother watching Caylee and her wanting to go out.
I haven't read through them all since I got them, but that's what's been submitted.
Okay. But there's numerous messages in here where you're asking Caylee to go out, correct?
I'm sure there are.
And there are times Caylee says, I'm sick, can't go out, not feeling well. Is that a yes?
That's correct, sorry.
Sorry. She needs to write down everything you say, so. And there are times that Caylee gives other excuses as to why she can't go out.
Yes,
Okay. And in fact, you're not Caylee, so you don't know what her motivation is for not wanting to go out.
that's correct.
And then you talked about yesterday Casey's relationship with Cindy, but one, you didn't know Caylee that long,
It's true.
and you never knew until July 15th, Cindy Anthony.
No,
So you can't really testify intelligently as to their relationship.
I testified as to what I was told.
With limited knowledge. Isn't that correct?
I testified as to what I was told.
With limited knowledge, though, right?
Sustain.
Would you consider yourself or represent to this jury that you have a vast knowledge of the relationship between Casey and Cindy Anthony, knowing her only 5 months?
Absolutely not. It was
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Overrule as to that question.
You may answer.
It was one-sided. You can only know one side of a story if you only know one person in the relationship.
And you only knew that person for 5 months.
5 months is relative. I've had some of my best friends over a month. Time doesn't really matter when you get close to someone.
My question was, and you only knew that person for 5 months.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as you testified earlier, a majority of your information or a majority of your relationship is contained in these text messages.
Or many phone calls.
And you also testified about a smell in Casey's car.
Yes.
But there is only one text message dealing with the smell in Casey's car. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And that one text message is on June 27th, 2008, the day she ran out of gas.
Yes.
And the day she left her car at the Amscot.
Yes.
And the day that she left her car at the Amscot with garbage in the trash. I'm sorry, garbage in the trunk.
I don't have any.
That's not what this witness testified.
I'll withdraw the question. Now, it's fair to say that, well, let me ask you this. Is it fair to say that your memory during that time period might have been a little fogged as well?
It was a long time ago.
One, it was a long time ago. Is that a yes?
This is correct.
Okay. And two, you were drinking quite heavily during those days, were you not?
I don't know if I would say heavily. Okay. I would go out with friends, but not any more than anyone else my age does.
And anyone else your age would mean almost every night?
Don't think it was almost every night. I'm sure it wasn't. I couldn't afford that.
3 or 4 nights a week?
Say 3 or 4 nights was accurate.
Okay. And each of those nights you, of course, would drink significantly?
Not significantly.
You would drink?
I would drink.
And yesterday when you testified to this jury that you crashed your car because you fell asleep, you were in fact drinking and driving.
I don't think that's relevant. I had drinks, but I had stopped drinking 3 hours before I went home. I had sobered up significantly, and I did legitimately fall asleep. It was a very long stretch of road. It was very dark, and I had nodded off in the middle of the day on that stretch of road many times.
You've nodded off on that road many times?
On like the way home from work during the daytime, it's a boring stretch of road.
And is that the only time you crashed?
From falling asleep, yes.
Can you turn to page 4736? The pages are handwritten on the left-hand corner, ma'am.
I'm just looking for it. Oh. All right.
Can you take a look at that?
Is it okay if I unbind it?
Sure. I'm sorry, that's what I wanted you to do. Have you found page 4736?
Yes, sir.
The third text message down.
Yes, sir.
Can you read that?
I hit a guardrail. Thank God I'm okay. I didn't get a DUI.
I'm going to object to improper impeachment. It's a collateral issue.
I think this witness has testified.
Well, let me see it. Somebody,
Yes, sir.
what number are you talking about?
It's the third text message down.
Is it 1916 or 1917?
1917.
Okay, approach. Okay, objection sustained. You may proceed.
Yes, sir. If I can have a moment.
Yes.
Ms. Huizenga, during that accident, it was you totaled your car.
I self-totaled it.
Okay. And the airbag blew up.
Yes, sir.
You had a bloody nose.
It was not bloody, it was just a little crusty.
Okay. You had do you recall having a head injury?
No,
Okay.
I don't believe so. I honestly, I haven't thought about it in a while. I just remember the nose.
Did you send out a text message asking for people to call you in 10 minutes just in case you passed out?
I don't know, did I?
Have a moment, Judge. I'm sure I can find that one. Page 4719.
Sorry, I was going the wrong way.
First text message.
Yes, I said I don't know if I hit my head or not.
Okay. And that's because didn't have your bearings straight?
No, had never been hit with an airbag. I didn't quite know what happened.
And did someone have to call you in 10 minutes?
I don't think so.
Okay. So you were fine?
Yeah,
Okay. And did that affect your memory in any way?
no,
And did you see a doctor in reference to that?
no,
Okay. So you don't know the full extent of what result that might have had? Never saw a doctor?
no, no,
Now, you testified yesterday that Casey dated Ricardo.
correct.
And after Casey finished dating Ricardo, she then dated Tony.
Correct.
And after Casey dated Ricardo, you moved in with Ricardo.
That is correct.
And you met Jesse after July 15th.
That is correct.
And Jesse is Casey's former fiance.
Correct.
And after July 15th, you guys went out?
We struck up a friendship.
You went out with Jesse?
I don't believe we actually went out. We met up a few times to talk about things to do with the case and trying to find Caylee.
Did you ever tell him you always wanted to meet a good Christian boy?
Well, yes, that's the truth.
Relevance of this and outside the scope.
Sustained.
Are there any other boyfriends of Casey's that you have gone out with or moved in with since?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Overruled is relevancy.
Goes to the credibility of the witness and motive.
I was friends with Ricardo. Oh, sorry.
You
Sorry.
don't need to answer that question. Next question.
Now, were you at the home, the Anthony home on June 16, 2008?
No, I was not.
However, you did talk to Casey that day.
I'm sure I did.
But you don't recall anything out of the ordinary from that conversation or
No.
anything that you can help this jury determine what happened to Caylee?
No, I cannot.
I have no further questions, Judge.
Any reader?
If I can have one.
You may.
Subject to recall, we have no further questions.
Any redirect, Mr. George?
No, sir.
Okay, may the witness be excused, subject to recall.
May I say something?
You want to make counsel approach?
Yes.